Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome, adventurers. So happy to have you back with me again today. And for those of you who are new to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or perhaps you've played a lot of D&D and you're interested in Pathfinder, or maybe you came here from another TTRPG, no matter what, if you've heard anything about the system, you've probably heard about the 3-action economy. That is our topic for today, so let's get right into it, shall we? What is it that I'm talking about when I say the 3-action economy? Well, to get there, first we have to talk about what actions mean in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So on screen right now, you'll see that I've got some images showing what I'm really talking about with actions. There are 1-action abilities, and you see that's a single diamond that's filled in. 2 actions, that's an overlapping set of diamonds, and 3 actions. That's 3 diamonds overlapping each other, all filled in. The other images on screen are the free action icon, and that is a diamond, but this time it's empty, and the reaction icon, which you can see is the arrow on its way back around. These are the different signifiers for the type of actions you can use in Pathfinder 2nd Edition during encounters. Now, these can also be used outside of encounters, but we'll get there. So, we've seen the images, we know what the things look like, but what does it mean to have an action in Pathfinder? Well, on your turn, and this is where we get to the 3-action economy, when it starts, you are granted 3 actions you can use during your turn, which is to say a total of actions between 1, 2, and 3 cost actions that add up to a total of 3, and that's when your turn will end. So let's say that you take 3 single action abilities. Well, great, you can do all 3, and that's where your turn will end. Or maybe you've got a 2-action ability like casting most spells, and a single action like moving up to your movement speed. That'll also complete a turn because you've used all 3 actions that you granted at the beginning of your turn. What else are you granted at the beginning of your turn, though? At the beginning of your turn, you're also granted also granted 1 reaction. Now, that reaction does not have to be used on your turn. Sometimes it can be, but usually you're using your reaction outside of your turn, but within the round. If you don't use a reaction before the start of your next turn, it's gone. You don't get to save them up. It's just gone. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to waste your actions, make sure you've got a reaction somewhere, and there's some you get for free. We'll get there too. So, like I said, you can put these together in any way. And I've talked about the actions, and I've talked about the reactions, but how do the free actions fit in here? Well, free actions always have some sort of activator, something that makes them so they can be used. An example, if you're a barbarian, then you get a free action at level 1 that says, when an encounter starts, you can enter a rage. Well, that's a free action, but it can only be used when that trigger happens. First turn, encounter started. Got it, in a rage. Awesome. Well, there's lots of these free actions here and there, and as long as you're satisfying the condition, you can use that free action. You can only use a free action once for any given condition, so you can't rage 4 times, not that it would do you any good, but you can't rage 4 times, let's say, when you get to that first turn during an encounter as a barbarian. Keeping on that theme of barbarians, though, let's look at what this whole first turn might look like for a barbarian at level 1. Okay, so you're a barbarian, and I talked about this. It's your turn. What are you going to do? Go into a rage. That's your whole thing. Let's get angry. So for a free action, you enter your rage during your first turn in the encounter. Okay, so at level 1, you also chose to take the feat Sudden Charge. This is a 2-action ability. You can see it on screen right now. And for 2 actions, you get to stride twice, which already normally costs 2 actions. But assuming you end within range of somebody, you can then make a strike. So that's 3 actions worth of action economy, but only for 2 actions. So great, I did a free action. I did a 2-action ability. That means 1 action remains. So for that one last action, I might take the grapple action, where I reach out a hand and try to grab a foe that I just hit with a weapon. Fantastic. I've used up my 3 actions, That's the end of my turn. It's the next person in initiative order. So in that example, we got to use our free action and our 3 actions. Our reaction didn't come into play yet, but maybe we've got something we can use later on. As a barbarian, you don't get any specific class-related reactions that you can use. And keep in mind that if you're coming from D&D 5th edition, you'd say, well, but everybody gets a reaction that they can use to make a strike if somebody walks away. Not in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Players don't get that, and monsters don't get that by default. So just keep that in mind. It's not that scary to move away, and in fact, it's usually a very good idea. That could have been the last thing I did as a barbarian. Okay, so we looked at what it looks like to use our 3-action economy. Great, but what are all the actions I can take? Well, for any given character, that's going to be a very large number of things to look at. So rather than look at every ability that every class can take at level 1 and everything that you can do with skills at level 1, let's just start with the abilities that every single character can take at level 1. And it's already a pretty long list, so buckle in, here we go. Let's start with all of the movement-related actions. And like I said, if you're coming from D&D 5e, this is different because usually you're using movement as something separate from your action. And again, we'll talk about that at the very end. Okay, so movement. You think, great, all right, I can move on. Not so easy. There's lots of different type of move actions in Pathfinder 2nd edition. The one you know best is called stride. 1 action, move up to your movement speed. Fantastic. Nice and simple. But you could also take a step action. That's also 1 action. You only move 5 feet, but if some creature you're next to does have an ability that lets them take some sort of reactive strike against you, they don't get to take that strike if you take the step action to get away. So it's a nice way to move away if you're, say, a little on the squishier side and just don't want to get hit, but still need to create a little distance before you start running. Then there's stand. Again, stand is not something you get to do for free, although there is a free action you can take with a skill later on, but that's a whole different video. Instead, standing is 1 action, and you get up off the ground. Sadly, if you do stand up, they can take a strike against you if they have a reactive strike. It's not just moving away. There's lots of things that can trigger that reactive strike because not that many creatures have it. Okay, so those are kind of the most basic types of movement. But then there's leap. This is a standing jump. Whether you jump forward or jump up, this is just jumping. This isn't a long jump or a high jump. Those are for a different skill video. This is just your general jump. Everybody can jump. Then there's fly and burrow. Put them together because they're basically the same idea. If you have a fly speed or a burrowing speed, you can fly or burrow up to that speed. Pretty simple. Then there's dropping prone. Yes, that is also 1 action, and you just hit the deck. It's right there, boom, I'm on the ground. And there's good reasons to do so. In fact, we'll talk about an action later on that takes advantage of you being prone. Other than the one we're about to talk about right now, which is crawl, which you can only take while you're prone, and you just move 5 feet. Yep, you're just army crawling along the ground. So that is crawl. Also 1 action. Arrest a fall. This is a reaction, but kind of ends our general movement stuff. This only happens if you're falling and you happen to have a fly speed. Because you can fall while you're flying if somebody knocks you out of the air. So if you're falling, you can use a reaction to slow your fall so you don't hurt yourself as you hit the ground. Okay, so those are your movement-related actions. Let's get into some more of the offensive-related abilities that use your actions. The first one being the one that most of you are probably curious about, strike. Not surprising, this is 1 action. You attack something. Strike means you're hitting something with a weapon or unarmed attack, and this could be ranged, could be melee, could be thrown, could be all sorts of things. It all falls underneath strike. Now there are some special things about how strike works, whether you get to use your full attack bonus or not, and anyway, that's for yet another video where we're going to talk about how to use strike actions, multiple attack penalty, and of course the different versions of success. In this game, in Pathfinder, we'll get into that in that video, but there's a whole range of types of success you can have. So that's strike. Now there's sustain a spell. For all you spellcasters out there, it takes 1 action, and what you do is you take an action to keep a spell going. Not all spells that last for more than one round require sustaining, but a good example is if you summon a creature, every round you're going to need to sustain that spell. In that case, there are bonuses to sustaining it, but generally speaking, because there is no concentration mechanic the way that D&D 5e has it, this is how you keep these greater effects going round after round. Then there's Ready. Ready takes 2 actions, and for those 2 actions, you determine a 1-action ability you want to take. Something that might be really easy to think about is if I have a bow and arrow, I might ready a single bow strike. And with that, I need to give it a condition to trigger it. So I may say, I will strike with my bow when the goblin pops out behind cover. Okay, so when that goblin pops out, I use my reaction, and now I can strike with my bow. And finally, in this kind of set of more offensive and defensive abilities, we have Raise a Shield. In Pathfinder, everybody knows how to use shields. And there's no proficiency levels for shields. You just can have a shield, and you can use that shield. But you don't get the AC bonus from a shield by default. If you want to get that AC boost from your shield, you have to spend 1 action on your turn to raise a shield. The rest of the basic actions, as they're called, that everybody gets, I'm just going to run through in alphabetical order because they didn't fit into categories quite as well. So let's go through the rest of these, and this will give you a good idea of the rest of the things you can expect to do no matter who you are. First is Aid, and this one's a big one. Aid allows you to use 1 action and your reaction to help somebody out. So you might be able to aid them in lifting a door. Maybe you don't want to do it yourself. You want to lift up this stone door. Okay, well, you're going to let them do it, but because you're helping even a little bit, you might be able to give them a bonus to their chance to succeed. So that's what aid is doing. You're using an action to say, this is what I want to help this person with. And then when they do that thing, you use your reaction to hopefully roll the dice and give them a bonus. That's determined a little bit by the GM on exactly what you have to roll, but that's the idea. Avert Gaze. Doesn't come up very often, but it can. This is just you looking away. If there's some visual effect that comes up and you have the option to avert gaze, so like a Medusa is trying to turn you to stone, you just turn your head, you get a nice bonus to that saving throw. And that's just one example. Then there's Dismiss. You dismiss a dismissible effect for 1 action. They don't come up that often, but they can certainly come up. Escape. 1 action. This helps you attempt to get out of being grabbed, immobilized, or restrained using your athletics or your acrobatics. It does take an action to do this, and there's other penalties that come with that, but we'll deal with that when we get to athletics and acrobatics as skills. Then there's Grab an Edge. If you're falling, and you're falling past an edge, try to grab it. Nice and simple. That one is a reaction. Interact. 1 action, and grab something off a table, pull a weapon out. Lots of things have the interact trait, and that means you're going to be using an action to interact with them, generally speaking. This could also be opening a door. There's lots of options that are laid out in the interact action. Mount. Hop up on a horse. Go for a ride. Anytime you need to hop up onto a creature that's at least 1 size larger than you in order to ride them, you use the mount ability for 1 action. Point out. 1 action. There's a theme here. A lot of the basic abilities you can use take 1 action. Point out is, I know there's a goblin over there, but all you guys for some reason have no idea there's a goblin over there. I'm going to say, there's a goblin over there. Sure, they won't know exactly where that goblin is. They can't see it. It's still hidden to them, but at least now they know a goblin's over there. So it's no longer undetected. Release. This is a free action, and just drop something. If you're holding something, you can just drop it. Seek. Seek is 1 action, and this is you saying, I'm going to look in this area to see if something's here. Specifically, you're going after a creature with Seek, so it's to say, oh, somebody hid from me. I'm going to look over here. Do I see them? That's how you use the Seek action. Sense Motive. 1 action, and you're trying to determine if a creature's behavior is abnormal. Maybe they're trying to deceive you. Maybe they're just nervous or anxious. Just if they're acting in a way that is abnormal, time to use sense motive. And take cover. One action, and this could be you're hiding behind a box or a wall, or you're just lying prone, taking cover. Maybe you go into the fetal position, who's to say. This will give you a boost to your AC, depending on the situation. It might be a +2 or a +4. And it's not only your AC that gets boosted, you also get an increase to your reflex saves against AoE abilities in the area. And that is all of our basic actions. That's not even all the ones you'll get at level 1, because there's a whole lot of skill actions you get for free, but the basic actions are covered. So for those of you coming from D&D 5e, or from Baldur's Gate 3, there's definitely some differences you've probably already noticed, but let's call them out. The first is, in D&D 5e, or again, in Baldur's Gate 3, you get, on your turn, one action, a bonus action, movement speed. There are some free actions that exist, and you get a reaction. The free action stuff doesn't come up very much. But the way the others work is that means every ability that takes actions is either spelled out as an action or a bonus action. While in Pathfinder, everything's just a number of actions, so you can mix and match as you will. With D&D, you cannot use an action with your bonus action, and oddly, you can't use any bonus actions you have with your action. So, no mixing and matching. However, in D&D 5th edition, you can just move up to your movement speed. You can move part of it and then move the rest of it later. As long as you don't go beyond that, you're fine. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, it takes an action to move up to your speed, and there's no splitting the speed. You can't go 10 feet and then 15 feet after you hit somebody. Whatever you moved during that action, that's where you get to move to. Yes, I can move 3 times with all 3 actions, and in D&D I can only move up twice and then do nothing else, unless I'm a rogue or a monk, of course. So there's definitely some difference in movement. And then the last thing that's probably worth noting there is reactions do work basically the same between them, and so do free actions, but free actions don't come up a lot in D&D, so that stuff's pretty similar. The actions in D&D, some are very, very well spelled out, like you see here in Pathfinder, some are not, but a lot of them actually do work very similar in concept. It's just one action in D&D uses pretty much everything you can do for that turn, whereas one action in Pathfinder is just a small fraction of what you can do. So definitely differences, good and bad both ways, but this is probably why you've heard about it, because it does change the way that you play the game. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that helped. This has been Captain TTRPG. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, please do like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Have great adventures.